What the hell? Gigi! Oh my god! Gigi! What the? Welcome to Platinum Reviews, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing the game in the Platinum experience for you trophy and achievement hunters out there. And for this video we're talking about Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. Let's talk about the elephant in the room first, the one thing that everyone was questioning ever since Capcom released the first trailer, Frank West himself. Now I do agree that they made Frank look like Shrek, and I wasn't a huge fan when I first saw it either. But with the voice actor change during my playthrough, the new Frank actually grew on me over time. The OG will forever be the most iconic, sure, but it's not like we can pull another Sonic the Movie scenario in here since the game is already out. Also, Frank looks way older now, and he sounds like it too. And while I was playing, it all just started to feel right. My brain constantly reminding me that I am playing an imposter the entire time, to fully accepting that this is the new Frank West. And you know what? I am totally okay with that. If you really cannot stand on how the new Frank looks, Capcom did add a DLC costume so you can still play as the OG Frank West, as a pre-order bonus. Kind of scummy on Capcom's part, but it's not like the skin is all that great either. Sure, you get to play as the OG Frank, but in the cutscenes...
Listen to me, I'm not here to hurt you!
Yeah, but I don't want to make this whole video about the character model, so let me stray away from this topic by saying that the graphics in this game is just absolutely fantastic. And that's because Capcom made this deluxe remaster with the RE engine. From sunrise to sunset, especially at nighttime, is where the ray tracing truly shines. Given that not every part of the game looks this good, for example on the outdoor section, in the morning and close to the afternoon time, this whole area just feels saturated and dull. At least for me, but other than that little issue, everything looked absolutely amazing, and it definitely scratched that nostalgic itch I've had for so many years and transitioned it to still feel like a modern game. Speaking of the RE engine, I also want to go over the gameplay changes. Compared to the original, you can now aim while moving, and this suddenly became the best thing to ever happen in this game. Now this doesn't always mean it's a good thing for some people, mainly because this made the game a lot easier now. The old meta used to be the mannequin torso or the katana at Paradise Plaza until you get Adam's overpowered chainsaw and the 3 magazines to make this thing mow down thousands of zombies before kicking the bucket. I still tried that here, but then I quickly realized that using a shotgun proved to be more effective for me compared to my old strategy. So jiggle picking 100% fools every single psychopaths in the game now, and honestly, I am all for it. Now, I'm not saying that guns are overpowered or anything, a lot of people still prefer melee weapons for the most part, and that works too. The lack of mobility when using a firearm in the first game was the main reason that guns are rarely used, and I'm just saying that it's a refreshing feeling to see that both methods are now viable strategies. Speaking of weapons, a new feature that was added to the remaster is a new way to use a really big melee weapon like the barrel. These things actually protect you from gunfire now, and it makes me insanely happy that they added this here. Sure, it's only used for certain scenarios, and you don't get to do this like every single time, but it's an added bonus that truly makes the game feel as realistic as it possibly can. And this 100% comes in clutch when you're fighting the hidden psychopath, Cletus. Notorious for being one of the most annoying bosses in the game because of his little camping spot with his little shotgun, and the fact that even if you manage to dodge his shots and get an opening to smack him up, he just picks you up and throws you away. Now you can use his little stand things all over his shop to block all incoming damage, and not only that, but I found out that even mid-swing, it still blocks all of his shells, which made dealing with this boss 10 times easier than the original. Going back to the weapons, and this is more of a preference thing, I guess like every review is just a whole preference thing, but I am absolutely in love with how the guns sound. And I'm pretty sure that they just grabbed the same sound bites from their past Resident Evil remakes, but compared to the original game, this just sounds pretty amazing. Some people are saying they sound like BB guns, and maybe they do, but this is just me comparing the remaster from the original. What? You can save this man?
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yes, I deserve this. I thought it was first after all.
While playing the game, I did complain on how slow the Uzi felt, but I didn't know this until after I already finished the game that there's a magazine that improves firing rate and damage. So originally it was on my list to talk about, but I figured I'd give this a mention since there will be people asking the same thing. The one thing that I didn't like is Frank's drinking sound effect. And for some reason, every time this man starts chugging his drinks, it sounds like he's forcing a hot dog down his throat. Another new addition are your camera attachments, which is a good little touch to the game, and it actually makes the camera shops all over the mall have meaning now besides recharging your camera's batteries. And these attachments are useful if you're one of those people who cares about posting cool pictures of the game online, since you can now add filters and stuff, which is cool I guess. And honestly, the only attachment that I really cared about was the flash attachment, but if you use the flash close up, you just get a picture of Jesus instead, which is pretty funny.
But you don't know the first thing about photography, do you?
Speaking of photography, Capcom ended up getting rid of those erotica genre on your pictures. I didn't think it was a big deal, but it did take me a minute to figure out why I wasn't getting over 500 pp when I took a picture of Jesse, and why Kent is now requesting an outtake type of picture instead of the sexy ones. With it being a deluxe remaster, I still did struggle on doing Kent's photography quest, which might be a skill issue, but I'm pretty sure that I'm taking the exact same pictures of this man until it finally registered as the shot that I needed. The biggest flex that Capcom did on this version are the enhanced AI for the survivors. This was a breath of fresh air because let me tell you that the difficulty in the first game was literally based on how the survivors behaved. And the OG Dead Rising is notorious for having the worst AI in all of video games when it came to these survivors. But not only did they fix the AI, but also added a new feature in where each survivor now has their own preferred weapon types, and this would improve their morale. If you give a survivor their favorite weapon or food, this would instantly make them happy. With a good affinity, they would actually go out of their way to help other survivors in need of help, which makes your job so much more easier, or even point out some useful things that are close to you.
I'm coming to help you.
That's so sick, dude. Every single survivor now has voiceovers as well, which is something that I never thought I needed. With added voice line, it made everyone in the game have their own personality, and it just makes the game more alive than ever before. No pun intended, of course. Now, there are still some imperfections when it came to the voiceovers, and the one thing that I found that was very off-putting was when I came to rescue Ross. And let me tell you, this man's voice completely changed after his dialogue, which was so off-putting, dude.
Looks like you got Tonya all worked up. She won't listen to reason when she's like that. You'll have to drag her out of here. I want her to get out of this alive.
I feel stronger already.
And the fact that they do not shut the hell up when you tell them to wait in the corner is something that they need to patch in the near future or something. Because even if the AI is already advanced, it still doesn't mean that the survivors will not get randomly grabbed by zombies. They are still pretty prone to dying, which is, if you're like me, I normally tell them to wait somewhere while I do my own thing for a little bit. And it does get annoying pretty quickly every time they yell out "Frank" every like 5 seconds. And I can't even start talking about voiceovers without mentioning Otis himself. The man that constantly calls you in the most inconvenient times now has a voice, which is actually pretty cool. Not only that, but Frank can still do things while you're on the phone with Otis. So now players can still kick some undead butt without having the call interrupted and Otis forcing you to read his entire dialogue all over again. They also added in a skip button for all the dialogues, which is such a godsend. And not everyone likes listening to the entire dialogue, and I'm glad Capcom fixed that issue with this improvement. Even better on your second playthrough, if you're just wanting to speedrun the game, you can now just skip through everything. It's great. Another addition that I thought was huge, and this has been an ongoing problem I've had with the franchise, and that's when you're changing clothes. So did you know that you can now cancel the animation that Frank does? No more constantly having to yell at Frank for jumping around like a little kid every time you try on children's clothing, begging him to stop before the zombie right next to him is about to go in for the munch. Clothing is the one thing that Capcom slept on, however, because the clothing in the game is close to being non-existent. You would think that they would add more clothing since this is the Deluxe Remaster, but instead they made new costumes in the form of a DLC.
As soon as Brad gets his hands on that terrorist, I guess it'll be case closed, huh?
You know of anything else he could be planning?
Damn!
No.
And don't get me wrong, I don't mind costumes as DLC, a lot of developers do this anyway, but for a game where its main niche is to find whatever it is you can find around the mall to fend yourself from the zombie apocalypse, you would think that they would add more than one piece of clothing inside the clothes shop. A little disappointed by this, but it's definitely not something that affected how I enjoyed the game. But with the added DLC costumes, you can also change the mall's background music in the options menu, and you get these music bits from the costumes that you end up getting. And I did get the Deluxe Remaster of the game, which came with all the costumes and their BGMs. And I did enjoy all of the BGMs that they included, especially the iconic save room music from Resident Evil. Speaking of music, they also added a streamer-friendly option to get rid of any copyrighted music, which obviously I had to enable, which low-key killed me on the inside since one of my favorite music in the game ended up becoming a generic boss soundtrack. It just wasn't the same. But besides everything that I just mentioned, they added even more cool things in the game that makes it so much easier than the original. Like, did you guys know that there is now a blender in the safe house? I am 99.99% sure that this wasn't in the original game, but this was such a good addition even though later in the game, the safe room will have like 0 food items. But that didn't matter because right next to the blender is a magazine that makes you put anything on it to get a random mixed drink. So ever since I found out about this, I never looked back. And this magazine was with me everywhere I went that moment onwards. And compared to the original, this game runs very smoothly with little to no bugs. I only ran into one bug that I know of, and I found out shortly after that this was because my game was about to crash. And then there's the clipping through the zombies thing, and this one wasn't as much of a big deal for me, but I thought it was still worth a mention. Running around, I did notice that Frank does the animation of shoving zombies aside while running, and if you look close enough, he ends up clipping through some of them. And the decapitations from using a sword felt weird at times, and this is me comparing the animations from Dead Rising 2, which personally I think they did better on. But I guess this is why they didn't fully call this a remake, but a very fancy remaster. Again, not a huge flaw, but it's just something worth mentioning. Also, maybe it's just me, but I think female zombies doesn't bite Frank in the crotch anymore. Instead, male zombies are the ones that do this now, which is kind of a weird change, but okay. And again, like another thing that's worth mentioning, I guess. So now that I talked about what I thought of the game, it's time to dive into my platinum experience. So spoiler warning for all the newcomers to the series. You're still watching, so I'm guessing you already know the story or you just don't care. Alright, cool. Off the bat, I want to say that the Deluxe Remaster is by far the easiest platinum in the franchise. Not only do you get smarter AIs and a handy dandy staircase but events, but they also added in some extra goodies besides the Mega Buster that makes this whole experience fun and relaxing. You can also fast forward time now, so you don't have to awkwardly run around the mall once you finish all the side quests for that time period. And not only that, but this also makes the grindiest trophy on the first game, which makes you do a single run on Infinity Mode for 14 hours straight, become one of the easiest trophies to get. The trophy count from the first game is still the same as the remastered counterpart by having 51 trophies in total, but Capcom did remove certain trophies like staying indoors and outdoors for 24 in-game hours, eating all types of food available in the mall, and even the Unbreakable trophy for getting the true ending without getting knocked out. Instead, they added an easier one, like sending a golf ball flying for at least 100 meters. There we go. I mean, I guess. But I do want to go over all the unmissable trophies first, like taking your first photograph, which can be done at the very beginning of the game, visiting Willamette Parkview Mall, which is basically starting the game, and defeating one psychopath, which is required for certain story-related cases, so this is also technically an unmissable trophy. And, well, I guess that's it. Technically, everything else in this game is missable depending on your playstyle. So let's talk photography. Frank is a photographer, so obviously taking pictures should be a thing that you should be doing, especially on the earlier levels of the game for that extra PP goodness. And a good source of PP are the PP stickers scattered across the mall. And I'm going to be saying PP a lot, so try to be mature about this. And the trophies related to this is the trophy PP photo for photographing 10 types of stickers and PP collector for photographing all of them. Compared to the original, original, Capcom has now added a trophy tracker in the menu, which brings absolute happiness to trophy and achievement hunters alike. Not only that, but there's also a tab showing where you can find all the PP stickers found around the mall. And this just became the very first game with collectibles that I didn't use a guide for, which is what made this experience so damn fun for me to do. I did end up missing a couple stickers on the annex section of the movie theater, which can only be accessible if you get caught by one of those cultists. And there are also certain actions the survivors and psychopaths do that shows a PP icon. Taking a picture of this would net you a lot of PP, which you'll need 10,000 of for the trophy, the Artiste. We are also required to photograph psychopaths for Psycho Photo, but unlike the first game where we need to photograph at least 10, now we just need 4 psychopaths. And taking pictures of at least 10 survivors for portraiture, which I got early on by taking pictures of the survivors in the entrance plaza just before the Hulk granny killed everyone there.
What are you thinking?
Pow! Pow! And 30 survivors for a census taker. There are 51 survivors across the whole game, and as long as you're constantly taking pictures of every survivor you meet, this should not be a problem. Or maybe you forgot to take a picture of a specific survivor and now you don't know who you took a picture of and didn't take a picture of. No problem, because now you can take pictures behind windows, which means you can just go back to your survivor kennel where you stored all of your Pokemon. I mean survivors, or the safe room if you want to call it that, and take pictures of everyone you captured, I mean saved. And a survivor blocking another survivor would still include that survivor that's not in the frame. That's a lot of survivors in one sentence, so doing this method is so much easier now. And the final trophy related to your camera is the group photo trophy. And the entrance plaza is where I managed to pop this trophy, and I was a little confused on how I didn't manage to get this on my first run, since I think I took a picture of the barricade, or maybe not.
Perfect.
But the easiest way to get this is you just take a picture of the barricade area at the beginning of the game, and there should be more than 50 targets on there. We do still have the clothes horse trophy for changing into all costumes available in the mall. I also didn't use any guides for this because on the locker where the clothes are now at, the locked ones actually tells you where to find the specific clothing. I did think they should have added this on the options menu as well, since people with short-term memory like myself would literally forget what costume to get. I could have been smart about it and maybe take down some notes or pictures of the required clothing, but I just went back to the safe house every time I forgot. But like what I previously mentioned, there aren't that many costumes to begin with, so if you go into a clothes store and equip a set of clothing, chances are you are done with that store even if there are more clothing pieces physically visible on there. And this might be a bug as well, but there is this one piece of clothing that I struggled to find because the description clearly said that I am missing a pair of shades in the Alfresca Plaza. But I went through that store and equipped all that I could equip like 20 times, and it would still be locked for me. But I did end up getting the final piece eventually in Paradise Plaza, literally on the other side of the map. Oh my goodness, Alfresca my tail, dude. I guess another costume related trophy would be Costume Party, and this is for placing at least 10 novelty masks on zombies. And if there's one thing to know about me is that I am dyslexic and I also have a bad memory, like I said earlier, which I could have sworn that the requirement for this is putting on 10 novelty masks on zombies at the same time or something. Pretty sure this was a requirement for the original, or maybe 2 or both, but for the remaster it's just 10 in total. The same thing happened for the trophy Zombie Road, for walking over 10 meters in total using the Zombie Ride skill. Zombie riding is a Frank West only skill, I'm pretty sure, because I don't remember this being a thing in Dead Rising 2. But I thought I had to travel a consecutive of 10 meters while zombie riding, but Capcom has now made this requirement to quote-unquote a total of. Yet another nerf trophy that they made super easy to get. I mean, it's not like this was a hard trophy in the first place. For free fall, you have to drop from a height of at least 16 feet. Now, there is not a lot of extremely high places in the game, so just look for the closest set of stairs into the second floor of the mall and just fulfill your inner childhood and be the Jeff Hardy you always wanted to be. Distance-wise, oddly enough, we still have 2 more of them here, like walking for 26.2 miles, which if you're trying to go for the plat anyways, this should just pop naturally, and a trophy called Stunt Rider for jumping a car or a motorcycle at least 33 feet in the air. There are multiple spots in the map with ramps and such like in the North Plaza, but in my case, I got this one randomly. I honestly still don't know what I ramped over, but it kind of just sent my bike flying for a little bit. Not high at all, but it still counted. While we're in the talks of vehicles, there's also a trophy for running over 500 zombies with vehicles. Bullet point is for firing at least 300 bullets. There are tons of guns around the game, especially when you reach overtime and start picking up the assault rifle that the special forces carry. Picking up the magazines at the food court for increasing your weapon's firing rate would also be beneficial for this trophy if you're more of a melee player and you probably have a total of 0 shots fired throughout the entire game and you just want to get this trophy out of the way. There's also an Uzi on the food court as well as the Legend Paradise Plaza that you can end up farming. Juice Freak is for creating all mixed drinks. All over the mall they have blenders that you could use to mix up various food items to make one concoction that can give you superpowers like superhuman speed or superhuman stank that attracts flies. Or if you're as stubborn as me and refuse to look up any guides for this game, there's also a magazine in the safe house that I was talking about earlier that mixes literally anything in the blender and gives you a random drink. And of course there is the Item Smasher trophy for breaking 30 items across the game. The easiest way to do this, and this is from my experience going for the plat on the original, is the food court area. And in the food court are these large barrels that break in one hit. Just make sure you don't throw these because apparently throwing them doesn't count. The game has to see you in the act of currently smashing a zombie's brains in with said item. And I was in the process of counting how many barrels I broke, but apparently this tracks across your save files, so that's also another somewhat grindy, well, not really, trophy made easier. And for raining zombies, you have to knock at least 10 zombies aside with a parasol. Okay, so I have no idea why they changed how the parasol worked in this game, unless I was just being stupid, but I remember the one parasol move is when Frank starts charging with it like he's in the medieval ages about to storm the castle. But in the remaster, he just does this stupid swipe that doesn't always register for some zombies, like it just passes through them. And this trophy might not be a grindy one, but it just felt awkward while trying to attempt it. And Strike is for sending at least 5 zombies flying with 1 bowling ball. You can find a bunch of bowling balls in Paradise Plaza sporting goods, and I have no idea how the bowling balls work. Sometimes it feels like I'm about to get at least 10 zombies, then a ball kind of just rolls in between their legs for some reason, so I did have to do this multiple times. The no-brainer method is to go to the tunnels, which I can get this trophy in 1 try. But my stubborn self thought, nah, it's only 5 zombies, I could just do that here. Well, I was wrong. So off I went to the tunnels when I finally got it just before I got there. And as for the psychopaths, they don't really have a lot of trophies related to them. That's because most of them are just tied to getting specific survivors. The more notable survivor to save behind a psycho is after killing Adam the Clown, mainly because of the reward you get afterwards. After stopping the out of control ride, one of Otis's buddies will be riding one of those carts. So after you talk to him, he'll show you a shortcut from Wonderland Plaza going towards Paradise Plaza, which is where the safe room entrance is. And I cannot stress enough how convenient this is on your day-to-day life inside this zombie-infested mall on a deadline. There's also a trophy for stealing the convict's car outside, but this is more of a one-time use. It would be nice if they ended up just spawning the car in the middle or something after successfully stealing it, but hey, at least we get a trophy for it. You also get 3 trophies for killing a total of 10 psychos. Still a little confused on why the game doesn't count the special enemies as psychos, since technically they kinda are, and these are the cultists, which you would need to kill 100 of them for the no thank you trophy. These guys are easy to kill, but let your guard down and they'll throw some sea salt at your face or something and drag you into their dungeon. Or sometimes they just straight up whip out a dynamite and blow themselves up instead of dying normally, which could potentially be dangerous if you have survivors with you, or if you're in infinity mode and you're going for the 7-day survivor challenge. I get rid of these dudes before they kill me too. No! And this would bring me to Legendary Soldier, and this is for defeating at least 10 Special Forces soldiers. These guys are the most annoying enemy types in the game because not only are they armored to the 9, but they also have the ability to stun lock you in place. And not only that, but headshots work poorly on these guys because they have helmets on. So the guys that hurt like a truck and can gun you down in 10 seconds doesn't have any weak spots in terms of the use of a ranged weapon. Great. I literally had to master my inner ancestors and went ninja mode on these guys just to take them down, because just running straight at them is pretty much a death sentence. Freaking Ashley with the karate moves, bro. Pow! Get some! Legendary Soldier trophy. Now for a trophy that's been overlooked in the first game because of the 7-day survivor thing is the trophy Transmissionary. This trophy was probably the worst one for me next to the infamous 7-day, because you have to answer all of Otis's calls throughout the game. In the original, Otis calls you 39 times, and those calls range from your story-related ones to side quests, visiting new areas, and when you're almost out of time for the main case. The annoying part about this trophy on the OG is that you have to wait outside of the rooftop. So you can't be inside the safe house, nor can you be on the rooftop itself, but just outside of it. And this also requires you to just awkwardly stand there and wait for his calls, so you can rush in towards 2 loading screens to progress through the game. Without any guides whatsoever, there's just no way in the blue hells that you're getting this one naturally. But the one that took the cake for me and why I messed up on my run, and which is why this is still one of the trophies I'm missing on the original game, is because I completely forgot to enter the tunnels earlier in the game, mainly before Carlito starts planting bombs all around the mall. I followed the guide to a T until I found this out way later in the game, so now I have to do a full playthrough yet again just to pop this. In the Deluxe Remaster, however, Capcom has decided that this trophy does have some stupid requirements, so they made it to where you only need to answer 30 calls from Otis instead of 39. When I started this game, the Transmissionary trophy was the only trophy on my mind, and that was the first thing I started working on. And this is when I popped the trophy midway through the game, which was a pleasant surprise on my part because I genuinely hate this trophy more than anything in this game. Oh, trophy, what? Okay. Speaking of Carlito blowing the entire joint up after disposing of the bombs, you'll see what eventually happened to Brad. And this is the trophy Snuff Shot B. Brad would still be on the same spot here, but Capcom has decided to tone down the gore part here compared to the original, which honestly made this scene less impactful for me. But to each its own. Same goes for our lovely blonde agent Jessie, where instead of fighting to the death, she just died from stress after finding out that the Department of Homeland Security has pretty much thrown everyone involved under the bus. Maybe quite literally. Which she just straight up started munching on the Special Forces agent that was supposed to save her after a last minute change of heart, which she also had a change of heart. Also quite literally. And at this point in the game, if you were thorough with your survivor searching, you should be able to get the full set trophy for completing your photo book. There's only a handful of survivors here that isn't related to any side missions, and these survivors kinda just show up without the game warning you about them. The ones that are missable and I always run into are the sisters in the Paradise Plaza and the hanging couple in the Wonderland Plaza. The same goes with the introduction to the cultists, which will be a side mission later on in the game that has 7 survivors related to it. I did miss this trophy on my first run because of the other batch of missable survivors there, and this is near the end of the game too. These survivors are found in the gun shop area, where you have to take a picture of the vent in the safe house first to convince them that you are not just spitting nonsense. Another known missable is the psychopath Kent, who you meet at the beginning of the game, because you have to show up just in time before he ends up killing a survivor, and the one side quest where you have to fight a cop lady. On my first go around, I already knew that the quest was active, but I wanted to finish something first. So when I finally did her quest, the other survivors related to that quest had already disappeared. It sounds like a bug, but this also goes for all the survivors that are just randomly in the mall. If you happen to go to a loading screen, then they would automatically disappear on you. And this also happened in the OGs, so I guess this is a legit mechanic that happens to the game. This would also go hand in hand with the Saint trophy for getting at least 50 survivors out of the mall. There's a total of 53 survivors, I think, because the game counts Frank, Isabella, Jesse, and Brad as survivors as well. But since the J and B duo dies in the story, then you're just left with 51. I read in the guide that you can afford to miss one, but I wanted to be extra sure so I won't have to do this again. And you do have to finish the true ending, which means going in overtime for the trophy to pop, since Frank and Isabella are counted as survivors as well, and they would also need to get out of Willamette. But now instead of just getting a shiny trophy, Capcom has added a new reward for getting this trophy, and that's the infinite durability and infinite ammo magazine, which is by far the most overpowered magazine in the entire game, and this would actually make the grind for later so much more easier. Which brings me to the trophy's overtime mode and infinity mode. To get overtime, you have to finish all the cases in the game and not to get caught by the special forces. And to get infinity mode, you have to finish overtime mode. So both really straightforward trophies right there, and starting a new game using your last save file would also nab you the Never Give Up trophy, and this is basically your New Game Plus trophy. As for the level max trophy, you would need to reach the max level, which is 50. While it is possible to get this on your first go around, it's just so much more convenient just to go for everything else and let this pop naturally during your grind. But now that I had access to infinite ammo and durability, it was time to go for the Zombie Annihilator trophy for killing 53,594 zombies. While the original method for getting this trophy quickly is to head towards the tunnels and just start driving over zombies for 4 hours straight, with the use of infinite magazine, there is now a newer and much more faster solution for this. During overtime mode, the first special forces person that you actually see has a rocket launcher on him. With an infinite rocket launcher at your disposal, to set up the new farming spot, you have to reach the part where Frank and Isabella are about to escape the mall through the newly renovated wall your pilot buddy made. While in the tunnels here, the game timer actually stops, so now you can just play around here to your heart's extent. Which is also why this is now the best farming spot for zombies, and not only that, but from the old 4-hour method, doing this is an hour less quicker. I mean, it's still a grind even if it is quicker, but at least it's an improvement on the first one. And not only that, but the game also tracks your zombie kills throughout each save file too, so if you wanted to farm that way, you could. The best means of doing this is just turning on some music or a podcast and just start blasting away, while abusing the respawn door by the tunnels. Doing this would also pop the trophy Rampage for killing 100 enemies with a rocket launcher. Before going to my farming spot, I did also get the helicopter trophy out of the way, and this is for repelling the helicopter at the park. I thought, rocket launcher plus infinite ammo? Yeah, let me just do this quickly. But I forgot that this helicopter moves around so much like there's a worm on its butt, so that using a rocket launcher made this a little bit too difficult for me. Other methods is just using the sniper rifle and sniping out the pilot, but I wanted to do them like what they did to my boy Mike in Resident Evil 4. Needless to say, I did not do this quickly at all. But after getting the Zombie Annihilator, we can now get the most used and preferred method for every Dead Rising fans in the game, the Mega Buster. Only now, we have the infinite magazine with it, so we're basically just playing God in a zombie-infested mall at this point, which is a perfect opportunity to finally go for the infamous 7-Day Survivor trophy. But like I stated earlier, the original game takes like 14 hours in real time to be able to finish this, but now, with this new mechanic of advancing time, you can now get the trophy in under 2 hours. It's not as impressive as the first game, sure, but finally getting this on my trophy cabinet felt so good after failing this run twice in a row on the original game.
I'd have been going full-fledged like, yo, get this man out of here now. Okay.
Why the emergency?
Oh my... Where?
Oh shit, yeah, my fault, man.
What the?
See,
Oh my...
this is why we need. This is
Ah!
why we need to.
Why?
Uh,
The one thing I did find out is that psychopaths in the game felt like they were random now compared to the OG, where you have a set amount of bosses to fight in a specific time frame. This threw me for a loop since I already had a strategy in mind, but as soon as I walked out and I didn't see Otis at the rooftop, I already knew something was wrong. If you don't have the Infinite Magazine or the Mega Buster, this trophy could still pose a legit challenge this way, but even then, it would still be light years easier than the first one. Now for the cleanup, I had to escort 8 survivors at the same time for the tour guide trophy. I think they also changed this one too, since I remember needing to bring them all in the safe house for it to count, but I guess now you just have to have them all right then and there, and the trophy would pop. Same goes for the Grateful 8, and this trophy might sound new, but this was also known as Frank the Pimp in the first game. Not sure why they changed it, maybe they just didn't want anyone to get on their case, especially nowadays with all the cancel culture mess going on. A lot of people were bothered by this, but it's still the same requirements as the first game, so who cares? With Tour Guide being straightforward and randomly popping this one on one of my runs, the game still has a limit of the survivors that can be spawned in the game. And the limit would be 8, which makes the Grateful 8 still a pain to do. This is the only trophy where I had to use a guide because you have to kill specific survivors throughout the game to perfectly get all female survivors at the same time. This also is very time sensitive, so you have to be at a specific place before a specific time. Like you have to kill the cop holding 4 or 5 female survivors fast and quickly go into Paradise Plaza to trigger the cultist scene so you can save the girl that was about to get sacrificed. But it is definitely more doable now though, now that the game also introduced introduced a quick save option after going into each loading screen. And the last trophy before the platinum is called Karate Champ, and this is for defeating 30 special forces guys with your bare hands. The easiest way to do this, since they can still stun lock you all the way to hell, is to use the throw move or the German suplex. This move kills them instantly, and it's also funny how they die when you do the German suplex. Like, they just slowly fall into the ground like they're on the moon, breaking their necks. But after chucking the last guy 2 inches away from me, I finally got the platinum trophy. This is it. For the platinum, will he be the world champion? The platinum champion of Dead Rising? Let's find out.
Trophy.
Karate champ. Let's go. And the plat, baby. 1,000 times easier than the first game. Phenomenal. Would recommend. 10 out of 10, this game. Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster is a solid remake of the first game, and honestly, Capcom is on a roll on how they made their remakes and remasters. If there's a world title for remakes, Capcom would be Roman Reigns. And as for the platinum, compared to the first game, I actually had a blast collecting every trophies in the game. And I'm not talking about how easy the 7-Day Survivor is now, but because they actually added a trophy/achievement tracker in the game. I never realized how refreshing it is to not follow a guide for collectibles, and I think every game should do this as well. But not every developers care about it like some do, so I'm glad that Capcom is one of the good guys. But that's the video. I hope you guys like the format of my video now, because this is pretty much how I'm going to be doing all of my videos from now on. Unless it goes bad. Then I'll just think of something new once again. But yeah, with that being said, I'm out of here, and I hope everyone has a phenomenal day. Trophy!